Today I'm going to show you how to make this unique organic rainbow burst cane. You probably already have all the supplies. The wavy cutter can be bought from Amazon for just a few dollars. You could also use the blunt end of wavy clay blade. Worst case, you can try it with a straight edge of a credit card or a ruler. First, make the rainbow blend. I'm using Primo clay for this. If you're using a different brand, I suggest using Google to find out what the best base colors are for that brand's bright rainbow blend. You need equal amounts of sunshine yellow, turquoise, and magenta, with the magenta split into 2 equal-sized portions. I'm making a very large blend. You don't need to use this large a volume of clay, but the proportions you'll use will be the same. There's nothing precise about arranging this, so you don't need to carefully size and cut the pieces of the blend. Something rough like this is fine. You'll note my colors don't come to a point, and that's deliberate. I wanted some of the pure colors to be visible throughout the blend. You'll also see there is magenta on both sides. This is deliberate as well. You'll eventually slice your cane in half lengthwise and swap the sides. It's important to have the blend continue naturally when the ends are swapped. Blend it 15 to 20 times until you see a smooth color progression. Next, we want to use white and black to create highlights and shadows in our blend, just like we did with the simpler green version of this cane. To do that, we need to actually make light and dark versions of a rainbow blend that we can then slice and lay on top of the base blend. You won't need much. I only took off about 1/5 or 1/6 of my long blend and split into 2 pieces, and that was still more than I needed. Save the rest of the blend. It will form the main body of your cane. First, I'll make the dark version of the blend. I used the same amount of black as I have rainbow, and it did come out really dark, but I think it worked really well with the cane in the end, so don't be afraid by how dark it gets. It's very important that you continue to put your blend through the pasta machine in the same direction with the colors going left to right. If you put it in with them going up and down, you will lose the rainbow and it will just blend to a brown. I only did about 10 blends, as the base colors were very well mixed already. Now the light version of the blend. In retrospect, I wish I'd used more white. If I did this again, I would probably use twice as much white as I had rainbow. It didn't quite have as much contrast in the end as I'd hoped it would. Next, I'm going to get my main rainbow blend into a manageable size. Slice your main blend into pieces between 2 and 4 inches wide. You'll notice that I messed up and didn't actually cut these the same size. Luckily, it doesn't matter much, but try to do a better job than I did. Now we're going to add the dark and light stripes. Arrange your dark and light blends so the colors are going the same direction as your main blend. Here you can see I have violet and blue on the left, with the orange and red on the right. These stripes will add a subtle but critical texture to the final cane, giving the illusion of ridges vertically through it as the light blend becomes a highlight and the dark blend becomes a shadow. It doesn't matter exactly where you put your stripes, as long as the light is always next to the dark and always on the same side as the dark. I'd recommend not spacing them perfectly along the cane. This is meant to be an organic cane. You also don't have to get the stripes perfectly straight. Just try to get the colors in the dark and the light pieces lining up approximately with the underlying colors in the rainbow blend. What is important is that the color in the dark and light blends overlay the same colors in the main blend. Yellow on yellow, green on green, and so on. The other important thing is that the stripes have about the same pattern and space between the stripes on each piece of your main blend. You'll be stacking these together on top of each other and don't want the highlights and shadows to look very different at the top and bottom. The white makes it easier to see how I'm making sure that the colors on the light and dark blends overlay the same colors in the main blend. Yellow on yellow, green on green, and so on. Next, you'll need to flatten your striped blends. Use your fingers and acrylic roller first to avoid the worst of the distortion when they go through the pasta machine. When they've been flattened a bit, run each through your pasta machine and then down a few settings. You want the stripes and colors to be going end to end through your pasta machine. This is the opposite direction from the way you were blending them before. I use an Atlas 150 and took it down to setting number 5. The exact setting isn't important, just make sure you don't get it so thin that it starts to tear and is too hard to handle, but thick enough so you'll get a good length of color. If you do get a few tears, it's okay, just keep going. But remember, there's no reason to go thin. I went down to setting number 5, but if you have a lot of trouble tearing, you could stick with 3 or 4. Do not fold like a Skinner blend as you're doing this. All you're doing here is stretching out the blend. If you try to fold to blend the stripes in like you would with a Skinner blend, all the colors will overlap and it will turn a muddy brown. Once all pieces are flattened and thinner, stack them as best you can, matching the colors, and trim the sides as needed. A few imperfections are okay. Finally, send that whole stack through your pasta machine and go down again to setting number 5 or whatever setting works for you. You'll end up with a long ribbon of clay with your white and black stripes running the whole length with magenta at both ends. If you prefer, you can cut and stack slices, but since precision doesn't really matter here, I just did a quick accordion to stack it. Do your best to line up the stripes as your blend changes width, but again, it doesn't have to be perfect. Now we're going to add the top and the bottom of the cane. Whatever you use here will be the background of your cane. I used translucent, but it could also look very good with translucent at the top and white at the bottom, or white at both the top and bottom. Regardless of what colors you pick, you want as much background as you have clay in your main cane, with the background divided in half. Half for the top, half for the bottom. I prefer a wavy blade, and specifically this cheap wavy vegetable slicer, since it creates more variation in the final cane. If you would like to buy one of these, I'll put a link in the video description. I also don't just slice straight across. Sometimes I do partial cuts, and I'm often angling my cuts. I want to pause for a moment here and show why we're doing this. The point of all the chopping with this wavy blade is to produce a cane that looks different depending on where you cut it. We're basically introducing some randomization that will result in a more organic, natural look for your finished product when you combine cuts from different sections. Okay, let's get back to it. After each set of cuts, reassemble the cane and flatten it slightly to join the pieces back together. Feel free to use your roller. If any bits fall off, just put them back on. This is not a very precise process. Don't neglect the ends. If you don't also make sure that you're cutting on the ends, you will not get enough distortion on those edges and you'll need to cut them off, or the part of your cane will be very boring. It's important to never flip your cane over and continue the cuts from the bottom if you're trying to recreate what I did here. If you do your cutting from both top and bottom, you will push some of the lines you're cutting back in the other direction, often bending them in the process. It's not important to keep your cane the same size as you're continuing to cut. In fact, it adds nice variation if you let it get a little bit bigger and a little bit smaller. I spent about 15 minutes on this portion. You can always cut into it and see how it's progressing and decide if you want to continue to cut it longer or stop. Just don't lose track of which side is top, as you don't want to chop from the bottom. It's important to try to keep your rainbow colors from going all the way up to the top or bottom. You need to keep that background layer there. Periodically adjust the sides of your cane so you still have your background colors on top and bottom. You can also add a bit more of your background color if you need to in a few spots. Cut through the middle with a wavy cutter and swap the sides. I I do this because the clay tends to creep up on the sides during the cutting process, and this gets it back towards the middle of the cane where I want it. Make sure your previously outside edges don't have any colored clay visible on the top. If they do, you can just use some more of your top background color to cover it up. Check the bottom as well. I should have cut my two ends with a wavy cutter also before joining them, but I didn't remember to. After reforming it, I made sure to do some cuts across that join line to help make it not visible in the final cane. Even if you use the wavy cutter, I would recommend doing a few more rounds of the cutting like you did before. You can see here how the top color is getting very thin in one spot. I'm adding a thin piece of the background color on top to make sure I don't have a blunt color area sticking out in the final cane. I'm only going to reduce half of the cane because I made a very large one, but if you did a smaller cane, you can reduce the whole thing at once. You don't need to worry about reducing it perfectly, but try to not have either the top or the bottom fold in on itself too much. That creates wavy sections of the final cane. You can see from the sides here that different sections of this cane will look very different from each other. You don't see the clean, long registration marks like you do on other canes. And that's the point! This way, when you take slices at different points along the cane, they look similar, but also different, and you can create that more organic, spontaneous look out of your cane. You can see how what looked like busy dark lines has turned into a subtle texture in the final cane. As I said before, I really wish I'd used twice as much white. I think that would make it look even better. I could use the slices of this like I did with the green cane, but instead this time I'm going to combine them into a round rainbow burst cane. When I'm arranging my slices, I make sure I'm never mirroring them. I want a different end up, so each section can look different. Form each slice into a triangle, taking care to make the end very pointy so there isn't much of a hole in the middle. Join them together in pairs, and then join the pairs together into a half circle. I made a middle piece by twisting up part of a cut end, and I don't actually like how it looks when it's cut, so I suggest doing something different. Maybe a solid magenta, or solid white or black, or even just translucent itself, or no center. To make a circle, cut your half circle in half and join them together again. Don't flip one side before doing this like you would with another cane because you don't want a mirror image. We want each section of the circle to look slightly different from the others to take full advantage of this organic cane. Put whatever you're using in the center, or nothing, and join the circle together. I don't actually have 3 hands. My 6-year-old really wanted the scraps of rainbow for her own artwork. Then reduce the cane, squeezing around the inside and trying to keep your ends as flat as possible. If you have cane caps, you can use them, but I couldn't find mine for this. On the left here, you can see what my daughter made from the rainbow scraps. She's really into unicorns. Just like the original cane, different parts of this rainbow burst will look different as well. So if you want, you can use multiple slices from different sections along the cane length, and each slice will look slightly different. I hope you enjoyed this video. Here's some examples of what I've made with a cane. I reduced it much smaller and made a bowl for my rainbow-loving daughter. I'll be doing a video on how to make this soon. It'll include all aspects of the bowl, including the background and the border. I also did a version of this cane with a blend as a background, and you can see how that makes it look much different. I think this could be even better with that blend on the outside, but then a solid black or white on the inside, so the inside isn't as busy. And of course, you don't need to turn your original cane into a round burst like this at all. Even the original straight cane can be used as a surface decoration as a brushstroke, or combined into different cane shapes. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them quickly. I'd also love to hear what ideas you have for using this rainbow burst cane or the rainbow brushstroke, so please post those as well.